Thank you for joining us for the 2021 Virtual Southern Home and Garden Show virtual presentations. Today we have Miss Amy Dismukes talking about pollinators. We would like to thank our sponsors, the Pulaski Lions Club, Bankston Motorhomes, Big Creek Winery, Blue Line Pressure Washing Services, Bull on the Run, Farm Bureau, Five Stones Landscaping, Giles County Co-op, Haney Realty and Property Management, Pulaski Electric Company, Pilot Maintenance, Tri-Green Equipment, the Giles County Chamber, and UT-TSU Extension, Giles County. Be sure to check out our vendors also. We have All-American Gutter Protection, Aspen Hill Growers, Butcher Drafting, Columbia Kubota, Flower Creamery, George's Quilts, Guardian Garage Floors, Kathy G Creations, Lane Roofing, and Leaf Guard. Be sure to check out our website, thesouthernhomeandgardenshow.com. Also find us on Facebook at Pulaski Lions Club Southern Lawn Garden and Home Show. We are also on Twitter and Instagram. We hope to see you soon.
Let's see here. So everybody should be seeing a screen that says "Come and get it." Plants for pollinators.
We do.
All right, excellent. So basically, I'm just going to talk just a little bit. I thought I only had about half an hour, but I found out I have more time. So we're going to talk a little bit about basically about how to plant for pollinators. And I did not include everyone in the program, but I will mention one of the other major players that's really coming into the, I guess, the side, our vision line now, we're realizing. But so basically, what is pollination? Well, pollination is the process of moving pollen from one flower to another that results in seed production. And I'll be honest, when I think of pollination, the first thing I think of is food. I don't think of bees and pollen. It immediately comes to mind food. And so we are really beginning to notice a lot. Obviously, our honeybees are in danger, but we have a lot of other insects that act as pollinators that we may not think about. You know, and if you can see my pointer, we've got this little guy up here. We actually have two beetles on one flower. You'll notice a lot of times as well that insects, it's pretty interesting. They don't really bother each other when they're on the flower. They'll often share. So, and then of course you see the spider every once in a while that'll get somebody. But, you know, normally we have wind, water, insects, animals, humans, and birds that are all part of the pollination process. The one guy I did leave out and I should have entered here, but bats. I wanted to include bats. Bats are night pollinators, and I know a lot of folks have bat houses and things like that now. But we are going to talk about these guys up on this screen right here just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is we'll talk a little bit about the insect or the bird in question, the type, basically, and what type of flowers they look for. And then I do have a few examples, and I have lots of slides in here that would be resource available. And I'm sure that if you would like a copy of the program, I actually sent it to Darby earlier and she can give you a PDF. So I hope you enjoy this, but let's move on. So when we plant for pollinators, there are some things that we have to remember that are pretty important. First off, we need to learn about the pollinators, all the pollinators. As we spoke, it's not just bees. We have beetles, we have moths, we have hummingbirds, we have wasps, we have moths, and then again, we have bats, and then we have the others that sit around and that basically exist, wind, water, etc. So pollination gets a little bit of help from everything, and that's how we make this world go round. But learning about those pollinators, I use guidebooks. I actually will often sit down and start notating what I'm seeing in my own garden and what are going around. One of my favorite plants that I'm going to say is a catch-all for almost every insect that I've seen in the backyard. We have mountain mint. Mountain mint will host pretty much every insect. I've not seen hummingbird on it, but it's pretty cool. I mentioned those sharing type aspects, but identifying your locals so you know what's coming around and you can provide for them. And if you would like more bees, more butterflies, then you swap over and you start planting that type of food, or you plant a mix of all of it. But so identifying your locals, you want to try to have blooms for all season. You know, there are some insects out right now, but they're not necessarily those that we want. But hummingbirds are heading our way. I'm surprised they're not already here, but I've had a feeder up for almost a month now. Mine went up probably about the beginning of March because our temperatures warmed up. So while we may not have blooms, we can supplement sugar for other pollinators that we want to keep around. Plant in clumps. Often you'll notice that you don't see too many insects just going for multiple flowers when they're hitting. They'll all go to the same type of flower for an extended period of time. Including natives, of course, not all natives. You want to have some night bloomers. Don't use all hybrids, just like don't use all aphids. You want a little bit of a mix. You want to include the larval host plants. Basically, if you want butterflies, you have to feed the caterpillars, right? We know the caterpillars are usually the form that do some devastation, often to plant foliage or flowers. So remembering that and using the right type of controls if we are having a little excess. Maybe even planting the pollinators or those caterpillars their own plants, and then you have your own for other uses. Let's see, lowering pesticide outputs. I guess I'm not really sure where I would be placed on the pesticide chemical line. I think that, well, in my line of work, you can't really grow trees en masse without utilizing specific controls. That tends to run true a lot of places. We have to treat everything for Japanese beetles coming out of the nursery, fire ants, that type of thing. So often chemicals do have to come into play, but we don't use them, or we use lesser toxicity before. Allow those IPM strategies to come in and what we can do before we start applying chemicals. Because as we know, anything we spray can have an effect on our pollinators, and those can also be organic chemicals. So just remember that. We just have to be careful. Reading labels, use properly. I always recommend spraying at dusk or early dawn when the bees are not out and flying, or they're either heading back to the house to hive up at night. So those are just a few of my thoughts on planting for pollinators. Now, for those of you who are really into native plants, I'm sure you have seen this, but you can see the website address up at the top. This says landscaping with native plants. There are several of these publications, but this is specific towards Middle Tennessee, the Central Basin and Highland Rim. And you can't see this on here, but it's actually a very large publication. Each of these plants are listed out. They'll have light, moisture, soil. Then you can kind of cross-reference and see which of your plants that you would like to utilize are actually good pollinator plants. So now we're going to hop on just a little bit to our insect pollinators. I do have bees listed as the first. Let's see, I'm seeing some chats break out. Sorry guys if my audio is a problem. So focusing on one type of flower at a time so that pollen will be transferred to another of the same species. When we get pollen from one species to another, we don't necessarily have seed collection, but it does add in for a little biodiversity in that seed when it is produced. So something very interesting about bees, they do focus on one type of flower at a time. So you will see a bee go from goldenrod flower to goldenrod flower to goldenrod flower, and they will stay on that same plant until they move to another flower. Okay, As you guys can see also, this is borage, and borage is actually an herb. It's a beautiful herb. It has a little bit of a cucumber flavor. The flowers are edible. You can use them in salads. It's pretty neat. But bees really like blue or yellow flowers. That's what we really see them on. They love them, love them, love them, especially the blues. They really like flowers that have an aromatic or a minty fragrance. I really like to use that mountain mint. I also like cat mint, not catnip, but cat mint. The bees tend to really like it. They like petals that provide a landing because they need a little bit of a break sometimes. They're not great flyers. And they also like flowers that are bilaterally symmetrical or a mirror image. Now, what do they not like? Well, this is kind of interesting. They can't actually see red. So red flowers are not really something for honeybees or bees in general. You basically just need to follow those types of, the little rules. We have red flowers for others, but they can't see that pink and red. They see ultraviolet, which is really neat. So basically, this is what you and I see. This is what the bee sees. So they have a very different perception. And as you notice, that highlighted area, the landing pad they're hitting onto, you notice the color is actually spread out and widened and made it very visible for the bee. I think this is pretty cool. So I mentioned that cat mint. The Walker's Low is one of the original varieties. They've also got a bunch out now. There's a variegated cat mint. There is also, I think my new favorite might be called Cat's Pajamas, and it's a little upright cat mint that blooms all season long. These are super easy. You just shear them off, but if you notice, it's a blue flower. Here's our yellow flower. St. John's wort is pretty awesome. If you think about it, I bet the center of that flower, where all of the organs are coming out, what the bee sees is probably a dark center that makes a landing pad. So it likes that open front flower as well. Whoop. Now, when we talk about bees, don't forget our native bees. We have wood bees, we have leafcutter bees, we have cuckoo bees, we have all sorts of bees. We also have bee mimics like hoverflies. There's just too many to even think about almost in North America alone, but it's pretty cool what you might see if you get out there and actually start looking around. So something that native bees really focus in on, they like these little dense clusters of tiny white flowers. Those will also attract your hoverflies and beneficials. Beneficial wasps, they're a good source of nectar for bees in general, for honeybees. This is the sweet alyssum. This is super easy. It's very drought tolerant. A lot of people will use this as a row, a actual row within a garden. Plant your pollinator plant and your beneficial nectar plant. Plant it as a row in the garden as you see to the right-hand side. Then you don't have to worry about it. It gets watered just like everything else does. Goldenrod was another I wanted to mention. The native bees and bees love it. But as you also see up here, we've got this beautiful little, I cannot remember what this guy is, birch borer maybe. And then we've got a fly, and we also have a bee here. Goldenrod is obviously, it is a native plant. A lot of people think of it as being very invasive. Most people think they're allergic to it. You're probably actually allergic to ragweed and not goldenrod. Goldenrod blooms, gosh, it's a late fall bloomer, so this would be a kind of cool one to work in. You have your seasons for spring, summer, and then in the fall, and then even winter interest. So something I did take out, and I had a really cool copy, a photo in here. It's called Fireworks Goldenrod. It's Solidago fireworks, basically, and it is a smaller goldenrod that does not travel underground. It doesn't really spread, and it's got a really neat blossom that kind of looks like a firework shooting and breaking in the sky. So that might be one you want to look into, but there are over 50 different native species of goldenrod that bloom across North America. in the fall. So it's very easy to find something. You'll even see it growing on the side of the road. I do want to mention carpenter bees. Carpenter bees, yes, they may be considered pollinators, but I don't like them. Not only because they excavate our wood, and they eat fences and houses and everything else they can get into if your wood is not treated properly. But they also are nectar robbers. And when I say that, they will actually go in, and when you and I look at this, this is this nice long tube, like for a hummingbird or maybe a moth. But this fella, the carpenter bee, will actually come and make a niche way down here, and they rob the nectar from the insect or hummingbird that it was meant for. I tend to get rid of them pretty quickly. I like the traps. For those of you who do not know, I'm going to tell you the difference between the male and the female. The male carpenter bee has a white or yellowish block on his head, and he cannot sting you. This little lady right here on the right side, she has no white block on her head. This is the female. You'll always see a lot of the males around female. You can actually pick a male up. He can't sting you. If you try to do that to a female, she is going to give you a nice bite. And I hear they pack a wallop. So it's up to you on how you want to handle carpenter bees. But I usually try to nicely take them out. Beetles. We forget about beetles, but beetles are actually the largest set of pollinators, which is pretty cool. They like bowl-shaped flowers with organs exposed. That means the insides of the flowers are usually sticking out where you can actually see them. Oops, that's supposed to say white or green flowers with a strong fruity scent, and they don't really mind if it's in cluster or a solitary flower, unlike bees. These guys are known to pollinate a lot of our favorites, magnolias, sweet shrub, and even pawpaw. So sweet shrub is the one down here on the left. If you're not familiar with it, it's one of our beautiful natives, and it smells kind of like juicy fruit bubble gum. And it is goes under many other names. I think it's my friend in North Carolina said her mom called it the bubby plant. I've heard lots of other names for this, but this is called sweet shrub, the Calycanthus species, and it's beautiful. Moths. Well, moths are night flyers. So in order to have night flyers, what do we need to have? We need to have flowers that open at night. And there are a lot of moon garden type plants, which is one of the labels these get because they're open at night versus during the day. These guys feed on nectar with this really long tongue that actually rolls up. And when they go into the flower, it rolls back out. It looks like a little straw almost, but often that proboscis is longer than the moth's body itself. Many of our wildflowers are actually moth pollinated, which is also really cool because that means that our wildflowers have evolved over time specifically to provide nectar for moths. They have to have that long kind of tube with a little more open flower. They are great flyers. We know this because you guys have probably seen them flying around stadium lights at night, along with the bats. Our giant silk moths tend to do that, which is pretty neat, like Luna moth. They will fly upwind, tracking their fragrance trail. They have very keen senses. It is incredible. So basically they sniff these flowers out from way up in the air and just follow it on down. They do prefer pale white flowers that open in the evening. And you'll notice a lot of our flowers that are night blooming flowers are actually paler in color and they're white. They like that strong, sweet smell. And these guys carry pollen on legs and wings. Now remember, as we talked about, if you want butterflies and moths, you're gonna have to provide food for the caterpillar. And this fella right here, the Sphinx or hawk moth, All you got to do is give them a tomato plant in the back and they will go to town. But you have to be careful about that because you may not have any tomatoes left. And there's that beautiful Luna moth we were just talking about. I think this is just amazing. But this is a list, and I'm not going to name all of them, but you are probably recognizing these guys are all moth-pollinated plants. One of my favorites is the moonflower bush, and it is a datura species. It does grow wild. I collect the seed from the little seed pods off of it and plant it, but it is a night bloomer. It is also actually a great trap crop for the tomato hornworm. They will go to it before they go to your tomato. So what are you going to plant? You're going to have some moonflower bush growing right around your tomato plants. Butterflies, and probably one of the biggest pollinator preferences that most of you guys, and honestly me, I love seeing butterflies. Everyone loves a butterfly. But butterflies are a little bit less efficient at moving pollen because they lack specialized structures. They have very good vision, but a weak sense of smell. So moths don't have super great vision, but they have a very, very strong sense of smell, and their antennae are used as vibration, and they can get where they're going and sense that way. And we know that they smell the flowers. Unlike bees, these guys can see red, and they are on every continent but Antarctica. So that would be a good trivia question. They visit flowers with that landing pad as well. They like bright colored flowers that are open during the day. They like any color flower. They love zinnias, pretty much about anything with a little deeply hidden nectar areas, nectar guides, and clustered flowers. Again, if you want butterflies, you've got to grow the larval host plant for the eggs. And I've got a few in here that we'll talk about. But this would be one. Monarch is probably the most talked about butterfly in Tennessee. And they are phenomenal and they're beautiful. And what a delight it is to actually see them eating your milkweed. I let them go to town. I don't care whatsoever. Milkweed will come back. It's a perennial. It's going to pop right back up the next year, but it's food for these guys and they need it in order to pupate and become the butterfly. Now, butterfly weed. This is another type of milkweed. And if you notice, this is one that the bees like as well. I've seen beetles and flies on it. Monarch will actually go for this guy also. It's another Asclepias. However, these are native Tennessee milkweed species. So there are a bunch of them and they're actually really cool. Excuse me. I think they're beautiful flowers. They do take a little bit of while. They're very difficult often to, don't try to dig one up. I'll tell you that much. That taproot is way down there. You end up breaking it off, but you can work with seed and work with the milkweed that's specific to your location. French verbena. This is one that often gets overlooked because it really is not much until you see this spectacular bloom that holds itself well over the foliage at the base. This is a really cool plant to be grown with native grasses or with that goldenrod. And as you can see, it's got lots of different guys. We've got a little painted lady down here. This is a cloudless sulfur. And then we have another monarch. Okay, I love this guy. This is the giant swallowtail. This is one of our native pollinators, one of our native butterflies. And it really, really, really tends to love rue. It'll also go to parsley, but this fella is, if you grow rue, you're going to see one of these on here. And when this little guy actually looks up at you, he kind of has a really hard looking little dragon face. I don't really know how to describe it, but when he sticks his red tongue out at you, that's even more dragon-like. So he kind of is, if you had the whole picture of him, you'd see he kind of looks like bird poo, and that is its mimicry. So the caterpillar looks like bird poop so that the birds don't eat it. This is a really neat one, but rue, I actually was able to overwinter my rue this year in my garden bed, and I put another one in, and I'm hoping that it actually kept its leaves on this past winter through snow and everything. So I'm planting more rue. It's also said to deter cats. Just a hint. Black-eyed Susan. We all love those black-eyed Susans. This is a little skipper butterfly, and then this is the eastern black swallowtail. This is our state butterfly on the right. Coneflower is another that brings them all in. All the butterflies love coneflowers. One of my favorites that you don't often see, it's another native, but I'm a big fan of Joe Pyeweed. They've now got some cultivated varieties like Little Joe, Baby Joe that are not as large as the standard Joe Pyeweed that we actually see growing in pasture. It is a beautiful plant. It has kind of a reddish burgundy stem all the time with the green flower, and then you get these dense cluster heads up on top. And they'll actually kind of stay for most of the summer. So one of my favorites. Asters. Everybody also loves the aster. It is a collector. It likes, or excuse me, all the pollinators like the aster. And I think a lot of it is due to, you notice these guys are in clusters, so they can really see this plant itself. Dill. We just mentioned dill. Or we didn't just mention dill, excuse me. We just mentioned the giant swallowtail. Well, this is the eastern black swallowtail caterpillar, and he is a cutie. He loves dill, fennel, parsley, and I have seen them on rue before, but they really, really love dill. So I like this fella. This is one, plant a dill for yourself, plant a dill for the caterpillars, and just pick them off and put them over on their plants. Dill has these really nice tight umbels. The bees love it also. You see we've got these little dense cluster heads of tiny yellow flowers, so you've got beneficial wasp also coming in. There's your butterfly. One of the trees I mentioned, this is the pawpaw tree. I love, this is a really cool tree. It colors so beautifully in the fall. The only sad part about it is most people miss these gorgeous chocolate blooms that happen in the spring because they're all the way at the very tip top of the plant. Often when we see these growing wild, they'll be a little bit long and spindly because they're not getting full sunlight and they're in the forest floor. And so all you see are these tiny, tiny tips of, looks like a little bud, but they're little, small, beautiful chocolate flowers. You can also get pawpaw fruit, which I've got in trouble one time for saying this, but I'd heard it described as the redneck mango. I don't know how I feel about pawpaw exactly. I kind of like it, but it's a difficult fruit to get into. It's very similar to a mango or papaya in that it holds its seed inside of the flesh. But again, the reason I would have this tree in my yard is for these guys. This is the zebra swallowtail. The zebra swallowtail must have the pawpaw plant in order to reproduce. It is required. So this is one of our Tennessee native trees for pollinators that is host specific. And then we also have the spice bush. I love spice bush. I love spice bush because it's pretty and it does get nice yellow foliage and you'll get these little berries. The blooms are kind of inconspicuous, so you really shouldn't be looking for too much. The foliage is more on it. However, this is the host plant for the spice bush swallowtail. I love this caterpillar. He is probably the cutest caterpillar I have personally put my eyes on. This is actually mimicry. And the caterpillar will fold this little roll up that looks like eye spots. This is meant to deter birds also, big eyes. And the caterpillar's face and head is actually right inside. So they go pretty quickly. These are really cool. You can actually tell when they're in the leaf because they will roll the leaf flat over themselves. One predator of these guys I learned a couple of years ago are Japanese beetles. Japanese beetles will actually go right through the leaf and they will eat the caterpillar. So control your Japanese beetles for multiple reasons. So they don't eat our caterpillars, and also so they don't tear and damage our plants. So there's that little, as you can see, this is the actual little caterpillar that's right underneath this sheath. And then these are eye spots. I think this is cool. And this is the real eye that are tiny. And there's our butterfly. So these are some of the plants that are probably just growing around wild. Mustards, cabbage, anything wild mustards, clovers, alfalfa. These are some of the butterflies that these guys are actually going to be going to. So you see the blues, the dogwoods, wild cherry, legumes, vetches, clover. The Gulf fritillaries love violets. So those are the little purple violets in our yard. These are all pretty much just grass, or excuse me, just plants just growing around with our grass. As you see, they're weeds and whatnot. But then there are actually flowering plants for pollinators. I've got a nice list of some annuals, and this is just a handful. I so suggest that you jump out and start Googling, start looking, see what's in our area and see what you can plant to attract different pollinators. So as you guys all see here, I love agastache. Liatris is that blazing star, Rudbeckia. There's that Walker's Low catmint. I would suggest looking for, I would actually look for the cat's pajamas. Gosh, excuse me. Virginia bluebells, Echinacea purpurea. That's the native coneflower that grows here in Tennessee, the Tennessee purple coneflower. And you see there are also small trees and shrubs that I have included. My Fothergilla this year has got two different, which we don't really want these caterpillars around, but I believe they're overwintering from last year, and they look like hag moth caterpillars, which do sting. I was a little surprised to see those. And then if you don't know, the red buckeye tree is a big pollinator plant for not only our insects and butterflies, but also our hummingbirds. P.S. There are a lot of different hummingbirds that come through Tennessee that may just be visitors, but the one we have that I really kind of see and focus on most because it's around is the ruby-throated hummingbird. She or he, this is a male. The male has the red patch. These are beautiful guys. I just love them. Hummingbirds in general are pretty phenomenal. I have an entire program on just hummingbirds and all of these neat little facts that people just don't know about them. Most of it, they usually don't weigh quite a quarter. That's about the weight of a hummingbird if you'd like to see what it weighs. They do prefer red colored flowers. However, it's more the tube shape. I've seen them go to black and blue salvia. They prefer the shape of the plant, and the color is not that important. However, red can help flag them down. Now you notice here, the reason these tubes are special for moths and hummingbirds. And that shape is supposed to limit insect access. And remember, we were talking about that with the carpenter bee and how he likes to go, or she, and actually rob nectar by cutting a slit at the base of the tube and sipping it out versus using its nose or proboscis or beak to actually enter the flower the correct way. People get a little confused as well about when are they coming through. Well, they're coming through a lot pretty much all year. We may be getting the second one, but we do have 2 migration periods in the spring and midsummer to early fall. These guys are usually in Tennessee by late March. So I always have said feeders up by April the 1st. Please don't add red food coloring. They do not need it. You can make your own if you want to. I sometimes buy clear liquid concentrate. It's basically simple syrup, a just very, very, very subtle simple syrup, and it does not need red coloring. So that's an old wives' tale, but they will continue passing through until about mid-May. These guys are feeding. Nest time is May through mid-July to August, and then you'll start to see them again heavily in towards the fall, all the way up until October, because this is actually when they're trying to get as much nutrition as possible. They're feeding the babies, but they're also gearing up for their flight. These guys fly straight across the Gulf of Mexico and don't stop. It's about 23 hours by flight. And I don't know, if you just think about that, a tiny hummingbird flying across the Gulf of Mexico and how it doesn't get caught up in winds, hit by planes, just a very, very unique little bird. So there are specific native flowering plants for hummingbirds in Tennessee also, and this is a UT extension publication. So you can actually go and Google UT extension hummingbirds, and it should pull this great publication up. And these are just a few. And I notice at the bottom, I have repeated myself with phlox, annual phlox. I apologize about that. Some of these you wouldn't think would actually be hummingbird plants like that phlox because it has a tiny flower. However, if you look closely, that flower is a tiny well, just like each of these little bitty entries on this Monarda seed head. So a few resources, and these are probably ones that you would not think much about. I like the Pollinator Partnership. That's really cool. Cersei Society is phenomenal. They've actually been into Tennessee and spoken a couple of times. I think the last time was in Jackson. Monarch Joint Venture, there's the North American Butterfly Association, Bumblebee Watch. The EPA has pollinator information, the United States Fish and Wildlife Services, the U.S. Forest Service, and even the Department of Agriculture. So we have a wealth of information. What I do recommend, I love blogs, but pretty much every extension agent specialist in the state will tell you blogs are great. It is a wonderful way to share information. However, if that information is not research-based, it is not fault-free, okay? It has not been proven. So while these things may be unique and you may think, oh, what a cool little deal, I can plant this with this and it will do this, or etc. We really want to make sure we're using resource-based publications or information that comes from universities, extension programs, and then with our government entities. Questions? All right. I am aware that apparently we did not get good voice coverage here, huh?
No, I think in the end it was good, Amy. So
okay, I'm so sorry, guys. You never know what you're going to get with it. Darby will tell you too. You never know what's going to happen on a Zoom.
Hey, Amy, this is Kevin. It was so
gods.
good. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good. I lost a few slides that I couldn't find to put back in there, but we would have focused more. I could have had some more. I would have left some plants in there because I know that's what a lot of you guys, that's why you would be here, is for the plant information. But it's really important to give the information because everyone has such different tastes and everybody likes something different. And then you go put a little bit of research into it on your own, and then you have your own special pollinator plant choices. So, sorry, there's the dog.
in the chat, you have one and it says, what is the best way to germinate Tennessee pollinator seed mix?
Well, sometimes you basically, everything is going to be different. And so what we do is we always look at the seed pack. Now, the next thing that I will do a lot of times, I will go online and Google germinating. Many of these are incredibly easy to germinate. Some of them not so much. They take a little longer. So it's basically, it should tell you if you need to stratify or scarify the seed. Now, there are also a lot of folks that are beginning to sell natives. Sorry, I just realized my camera was on and my face was way up there. Lowe's for the past couple of years has been getting Joe Pye weed. Crazy enough. So I stocked up on it, and they sell it much cheaper than some of your native plant stores. There are also native plant store specialists around. One of the biggest ones that was in the area was Mary's Greenhouse, and sadly it has closed. But you have a lot of other options. Riverbend Nursery, I know more and more. Gosh, Bates has good native selections. It just depends. Anything that they have by seed, I would try the seed first, because most times you're going to have, sometimes things can be a little bit expensive. But there are other plants that I will just purchase myself. So perennials usually are a little bit longer to establish. So those are the ones that I go, if I'm getting a perennial, I will go ahead and buy a plant versus seed, because I have no patience and can't wait. Oh, there's also, let's see, there's also several that you can put in if you are interested for flowers. American Meadows has got a Southeastern wildflower seed mix or pollinator seed mix, and they often have them for dry areas, wet areas. So you can buy mixed seed all ready to go. It's not crazy expensive either. Is that it? Oh, which milkweed has the globe flower? Several of them. The common milkweed was the very first one. And then there's a lot of them. The swamp milkweed has a little bit of a round head. Now, butterfly weed doesn't really, it's going to be a little bit different. But your common milkweed has the big pink purple head. Look. I don't know if my screen is still sharing. I'm assuming it is, because I didn't turn it off. Oh, I went past it, sorry. So this is Clepias. Is this the one we're referring to? I wish I had put pictures of all of this. These are really cool. Common milkweed. I think green comet, purple milkweed, swamp milkweed, and I believe the tall green milkweed. The lower left, I am not 100% sure about that. That might be clasping. I'll have to look. Sorry, guys. That's common. That's butterfly weed. Not 100% sure. But I think that would be an excellent research topic to Google all of the milkweeds that, now these are just some that will grow in Tennessee. There may be more. That would be a cool, be a nice little project to have. Anything else? I was looking to see, that is not clasping. That's showy milkweed, I believe, which I don't even have up here. I'm pretty sure, maybe. There's multiples that actually look similar to this. There's also prairie milkweed. Oh, and here's a collection, just in case anyone's noticed. I'm on my phone, sorry. But I was just looking on Amazon. They actually have a collection of milkweed seeds for $16.85. It's 6, y'all can't see that. But I was trying to see if, I believe that one, that is showy milkweed. So, and it's in this packet. But, all right, well, I guess if that's it, I'm gonna try to stop sharing my screen if I can figure this out. And
Amy, thank you very much for coming and presenting and showing
Absolutely.
us all these beautiful plants, and covering all the insects that go along with it, because they both work together to do that. And so I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate everybody that joined us today. And if you get a chance, go and check out our Lawn and Garden Show on Facebook. Check out the Pulaski Lions Club Southern Lawn and Garden Show.
Thanks for having me. I had fun. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more examples of stuff. I love to show plants.
We were talking earlier in one of the sessions that kind of whenever we do some of these, that they could actually be several hours or several presentations within themselves. You know, you could probably just pull one class of pollinator out and do a whole session with them.
I was going to say I could have done an entire hour just on European honeybees, you know, or just on the native bees. And it is so much. And you try to fit a whole lot of everything, a little bit of everything into the program. So if it was confusing, I apologize. But again, Tarby, I did send you that little PDF. And if anyone wants it, you're welcome to it.
Well, I will send them a link to this presentation once I get it uploaded, and I'll send them the PDF to go along with it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll
bye, guys.
See y'all later. Bye.
Bye.